how to lose and how to choose.
Well, hello, this is Linda Carbonell from Walking the Light TV show. I'd like to welcome back Wtl Samuelson.
Hello.
Hi, Catherine. So we were talking about what our next subject should be, and we were talking about fear and
Moving through fear.
moving fear. That's a good one, you know, because so many people have.
Right, and it really hamstrings you. It's like, where does fear come? And interestingly, we had decided on this topic, and I had a dream this morning about where some of my own fear comes from. You know, down in the sub-basement of your brain or your mind, so to speak, and facing your fear and seeing, you know, maybe it's not so bad, you know. And part of it, and the book, is it struck me, and I probably need a different stand than this one. But one of the things you can do is, as the angels and guides came through, if you can see it, it says, breathe deeply, breathe slowly. You can breathe through anything. So when you start to feel that panic, that fear, stop, slow down. And I have a book called Fear by, I'm never sure if it's Thich Nhat Hanh or Thich Nhat Hanh. And it's called Fear. And I was flipping through it this morning, and it was like, oh, he's right on with the book, talking about breathing, being in the present moment. And he's talking about that if you are fully in the present moment, you don't have fear because you're not thinking about the future, you're not thinking about the past.
Absolutely. And the one thing I can identify with moving through fear, I think, is, you know, because obviously I've had mental illness most of my life. And one particular was agoraphobia. And it was just such a big fear to go out that door. I mean, I fought it and fought it and fought it. And I can remember the day that I succeeded, and I got all the way down to the park here, and I was trying to think, how did I do that? And what I came up with is that along the way I stopped and noticed what was in the road. You know, like there was a feather, there was a butterfly that I decided I was going to follow, you know, things like that.
Right.
So if I'm not thinking about the fear.
You instead of fighting it, you were moving through it.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Sometimes I think when we fight those emotions, it becomes more rigid, it becomes more internalized. Breathe it, face it, you know, and then find a way to move around it or through it.
Yeah, and it's often common that you'll hear people say that they have such a fear that they could never do that. And I think that if we do face our fears, but then find a way that we can overcome, you know, that we can go just a little bit beyond what we think we can't, and then we can.
Right, and and for me it was interesting. It was about fear of not being good enough, fear of, you know, whatever, you know. And if you realize that you as a human being are not perfect. I used to ride the commuter rail in the Chicago area, and one of the women I rode with said, "Only Allah is perfect." You know, and one of the meditations in the book is, in the eyes of the universe, at this moment, you are perfect for who you are. And as I tell clients, if you've had a snit, you're the perfect snit haver.
Don't you think that people, though, they bound their fears a lot about what other people think, or
right.
They don't want to go because what's other people going to see in them, they're afraid of that. And so it becomes a chase around for that, is that I can't succeed enough so that people will see me in the way that I want to see, them to see
It's
me.
turning the language around.
Exactly.
I would, you know, when you go, well, I would do this, but blah, blah, blah.
Exactly, yeah.
And when you change it to, I am going to do this so that then, so you change the language.
It's not to please anybody else. It's for yourself, obviously.
And if you think, so what's the worst thing if it happens if I mess up? At least I tried it. I've learned something. You don't have success without failure.
Exactly, yeah. And not only that, but I think it's a lot of baby steps too, you know, trying, just keep trying. And, you know, day by day, maybe do a little more.
Right, and as you say, so if you have something you want to accomplish, you want to start a business, and you're afraid of it, well, the first thing is to do is my heart's passion in this thing? or is I'm just going to do it to make a lot of money. Well, you know, you've got to have some passion about it.
Yeah.
I've done some book talks about the book, and one of the things is you've got to love your book. If you're going to write it, you have to love it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a passion for it. And so you do things step by step, you know, so then you can break it down. And that's, as a life coach, I can help you break those steps down and help you move forward through them. It's like, and sometimes you have to say, okay, I'm going to put this step aside for now because life has happened.
Yep. Yeah. But that, for me, it's always there. And I think a lot of failure, I think about the times that I tried and I couldn't, and I had these words in my brain that I will never be able to, or I will never be a good person enough for other people to think anything good about myself. And
that's where the practice of changing the language, changing the story.
And it became more of, what type of person do you want to be? What can you do to better love yourself? You know, what is it that's important to you?
And it's that deep breathing and being
that's a big
here. You know, think about when you are engaged in an activity that you really love. It focuses down. You don't think about the past. You don't think about the future. You're just right here, right now.
Mm-hmm. And that's where we want to be.
And so I think, obviously, I'm not a therapist. You know, as a life coach, there's many things that I'm capable of helping you with, but not. I'm not a therapist. But it seems to me that when you start to feel that panic, if you start some deep breathing, you know, and try to then figure out what triggered the panic, you know, and what about that thing is tied up with panic with you. Mm. And then, I would probably suggest somebody see a therapist, you know, if I was working with them.
Well, for me, you know, therapy was pretty intense when I was younger, and then as I got older, it was more about, you know, my excitement of finding ways that I can help myself. And that's one of the things. I no longer have to live back there. I don't have to live it. I don't have to talk about it. I don't have anything to do there. All I need to do is work on myself to get to the next step that I want to get to.
Right, and you've learned that it's not something to be feared.
Exactly. But there's so many people that do have that fear, Catherine. They're convinced because they've been told, you can't. And this is the way it's always going to be.
It could even be, and I was thinking about it, it's not anybody in my family said, oh, you can't do this, or you blah, blah. It's sometimes you pick up other people's
stuff,
their emotions, their fears. They may not talk about it directly, but children absorb those things.
Yeah, they do.
And I had a life coach, you were talking about that, I had a life coaching client who wanted to do a certain business, and everybody in the family was saying,
That's just my gig. That's just my gig.
You can't do that. And my first question to her is like, why not? It didn't mean she could, but she needed to stop paying attention to those other voices.
Exactly, yep.
And taking on their fear. Mm-hmm. And she now has the business she wants to have.
And I think, too, it's a lot of people we think that are authorities, like teachers, doctors, people in business, your boss, and all of that, that either put certain expectations on you or say, okay, you're not capable of that. You're not capable to do that. And I think that's where we stay stuck in our minds.
Right,
and so if they say no, then we automatically tell ourselves, okay, we can't.
Right. And that's why then you try to find the people in your life who say, well, you can, you know, but maybe you have to do it in a different way than you think you know.
Right.
The path isn't necessarily straight, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to work around something.
Or you have to work harder. But if you have that desire to change and that's what you want to do, then you're the only person who knows yourself best, that how you're comfortable doing that. If you just, instead of listening to others and you're listening to your own self, I know I can. Even though they say I can't, I know I can. And it's just like
you just might have to find a different way to do it.
Exactly. You know, it was like remember I shared with you that I couldn't read or write, and I was told that I never would, and then being presented with, do you want to learn? I'm like, I can't. But being presented with a way that I could if I worked at it. You know what I mean? And then actually feeling the success of that was greater than the feeling of they said I couldn't, so I'm stuck where I couldn't. Instead of finding the success that no matter how much hard work it took, I could.
Right. And I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people can do that. Do you think so?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, if they change their mindset from hearing the
I call
tapes.
it changing the language, changing the story.
Yeah, exactly. And I know your book can be helpful with that too, because I've used a lot of it with the different meditations and getting out of it what I wanted to get out of it in the writing exercises and really paying attention to that. You know, because a lot of it for me is when I'm writing, I get certain words. And I say, well, that's what I'm supposed to pay attention to. I just got to tell you that this book has really made a difference in my life.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, I can't thank you enough for writing it. And
Well, with a lot of help from them.
exactly,
From
yeah.
the angels and guides, you know.
Yeah, yeah. But you were meant to write it, you know. And like me, you just said, well,
Okay.
I'm gonna do it. Yeah. It'll take me
It's
some
like, are
time.
you sure?
Might take me some time, but I'm going to do it. Yeah, I like that. You know, for me too, is inspiring, empowering people to see that they can do anything they really want to do. I think that's important. You know?
Again, to use one of the words I used to use, caveat, that you might have to find a different way to achieve it than someone else.
Right.
You have to find what works for you, not what works for someone else.
That's right. Yeah. But you can find that because you know yourself better than anybody, and you can find what would be helpful for yourself. You can. Yeah. If that's what you want. Which is kind of like, I guess I like to say when I first decided I was going to do Walking Through Life, how scared I was. How scared I was.
That fear came up.
Oh, yes. It was like I had to my best friend. I said, you have to come with me and sit right beside me. But you know, she was there for me, you know.
So
It was
part
right
of
there
moving
to-
through the fear can be finding those people who provide
will
the support.
you. Yeah. Stand beside you.
But I think everybody has had fear. I've had fear. Talk about, oh my God, you mean I'm going to go argue in front of the appellate court?
Yeah.
Talk about a little
Yeah.
anxiety, fear.
Yeah.
Can I
Yeah.
do this?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the fear of the unknown. What's going to happen when, you know, is this going to go good or... Another example, too, is that, you know, when you get services and you have to fill out these applications and in your mind you're wondering, am I going to be able to get this or am I going to be able to, have I forgotten anything? Do I need to send anything else? And that's a simple fear of not knowing if you did it right or not.
Not being perfect at it.
Exactly.
Or in most cases, they will tell you, you forgot this piece of information.
Right, and then you can just send it. But a lot of people panic over the fact that they don't have it. They don't know exactly, you know. Like I have friends that have lost their Social Security card or their IDs or, you know, whatever, important paperwork, you know. And the solution is you just call, ask for another one, you know.
Well, Social Security might be a little bit harder than that, but...
Yeah, that's true. That is, yeah. So you have to make sure but you have time to get them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did
Panic
that. I had to
doesn't do
do that
anything.
once while working in downtown Chicago. So it's like, oh, good, going to the Social Security office in downtown Chicago. Oh, great.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I know Ted, my husband, when he retired, that was a big fear for him because he worked the majority of his life, you know, part-time, but doing something. So when it was time to retire, it was like, what am I going to do with myself now, you know?
Well, and I remember my dad moving towards that, and I'm like, well, Dad, you know, what did you want to do after you retire, you know? But he went to retirement right. He slowed down and...
Right. Well, I think that it was great for Ted to actually find what he wanted to do and where he wanted to do, you know. One of his biggest things is always helping me, so he's got this thing where now he does the housework or he does, you know, good things for other people even. somebody needed an air conditioner taken out or taken in or put in or whatever, and that's his way of feeling like he's being useful. It's when people need him, he's there. And I think that's important for him.
And again, it's moving through that fear of
what am I going to do? What am I going to have to do?
Yeah.
You know, what's the money situation going to be like? You
and
know,
it's all sorted itself out.
Yeah, exactly. You know.
So again, going back to Tich or Thich Nhat Hanh, it's being in this present moment, being fully who you are. And I've had days where the perfect me's been a screw up.
Yep. And then
But
what do you do?
You move through it.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's not fighting something, it's moving through it. And I'm not quite sure how to describe the difference, but it feels different to me.
Yeah.
I think you stop struggling with it.
Yeah.
And you stop, oh my God, I should be this other thing.
Exactly, yeah.
Instead of, because acknowledgement is not necessarily accepting things as they are, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You can acknowledge, okay, this is the situation. Now I just have to breathe and find my way through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, it totally does, because, you know, one thing when you panic is you can't think. You can't think, and you just get all uptight and your hands start to shake or whatever, and your first thought is, this is going to be done now. It's got to, right now. What I have to do something to fix this right now. When actually, like you said, if you sit back and realize this isn't going to be done like you want it right now.
It's like you get the letter that you missed a bill payment on a Saturday.
What are you going to do? But, you know, instead of panicking about it that moment.
And having fear that something, you know, you're going to lose a service or.
Right.
It's like.
Yep, breathe. And, you know, actually I found when I panic, I can't think about anything. When you panic, you can't think.
No, your mind races.
Exactly, yeah.
You're thinking about all the horrible, terrible
things that are going to happen. Absolutely.
And most of the time, things I've worried about haven't happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we're human, and we do that.
Yeah. It's like making a batch of cookies for a friend, and they come out terrible. So you have to make another batch. Or you think you have to make another batch. When actually you could just give them the ones that you made, and they're not going to tell you they're bad because they don't want to hurt your feelings. So just give them the messed up cookies.
Unless they're burnt to a crisp.
Well, then you could scrape them, I guess. I don't know.
That might be a little much, Linda.
Yeah, well, you'd think if they're your friends, they're not going to hurt your feelings anyway. I've never done that, though. So that's just an example, you know. If you're panicking, yeah, I mean, you know, you got time to make another batch of cookies or whatever. Go to the store and buy some and put them on the plate and say, these are for me. Same thing. At least you wouldn't be throwing them messed up cookies, yeah, I guess, you know.
Right, so there you just sit down and you think about, you know, and the thing is, if you're making them cookies, are you doing it as a gift? Do you have to do it today?
Right, yeah. It's like, you know, I'm working on pictures that I'm drawing for my sisters. Kathy's, I'm drawing her one for Mother's Day, and then my sister Janet's birthday. So I was trying to think in my mind, what am I going to draw, you know? And I'm just penciling things down and saying, I don't like that, I don't like that. So I kept doing that, and then I finally put it down and said, oh, well, I'll do it tomorrow or whatever. But a couple hours later, I saw the picture in my brain, and I said, wow, that's the one I want to draw, you know?
Right.
And then so I knew what I wanted to draw at that time, but I guess I didn't know when I was starting to panic.
Again, you know, and I'm sure there's a difference definitionally between panic and fear, but I think they're really interrelated somehow.
Well, yeah, because when you panic, when you panic, it's just the fear of not getting into whatever it is. It's the fear of not being able to succeed in it when you panic, you know. Or if, say, somebody that's got PTSD like me are triggered, you know, and then it's in automatic panic that something like that can happen again. But again, with PTSD, you can work through that and actually get better. The more you do it, with me anyway, the more I did it, the more comfortable I got, the more less scary it was, the more less I panicked. And more or less anxiety.
When you learned what it was.
Exactly. That triggered it, yeah.
And you learned that you could move through this fear of it.
Mm-hmm. But I think it would be really hard for some people to be able to succeed in doing something like that. But like you said, your book really is helpful with that. But also knowing that this isn't something that's just going to happen overnight. It's going to take time.
It's a process.
You know? Yeah.
And you
Practice,
and
practice.
going out and finding the help that you need.
Exactly. Whether it's therapy, doctors, or whatever it is that can be helpful
Right.
to you. Absolutely.
Right. And there may be some people that a PTSD is so deeply entrenched that they won't make the progress that you do.
Right.
So they have to learn to deal with it in the way that they can.
Right. They have to learn how to, or even the way that they are dealing with it right now is fine for them, you know? But that doesn't mean they're not going to find a way to make it a little bit easier for them, for themselves, or what makes them better. Or
I just don't
whatever.
want us to be in a position of saying to people, oh, if you have PTSD, you can get over it.
Right. No, I'm not saying that to anybody. I'm saying for myself only.
Right.
Only for myself. But that's because I know what I need. I know what triggered me, I guess. I knew what triggered me, and I knew not only what triggered me, but when I decided, when I overcame the triggers that were really bad for me. For me, it was a lot of going out, and getting a little more comfortable going out. You know,
Right.
a little more comfortable being around
you
people.
know, that you weren't going to be walking out the door, you weren't going to get hit by a car. Or,
Exactly, but not only that, but I think people need to realize that for me, PTSD is a lifelong thing, you know, so it didn't happen yesterday or,
Right.
you know, today that I was able to overcome. It took many years, you know, and it took much research, much therapy and all of that. But the only reason I was able to succeed is because that's what I decided that I was going to do, and I found a way for myself to do it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that I don't still get triggered, because you do, but you know how to handle it better. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there's some people who make the choice to not get better.
Right, exactly.
And there's some people who
It's too much for them.
it's just too much.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Which
it's
that's okay.
it's so interesting to me how much of stuff can be fear-based.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you look at girls that go on diets, binge diets or whatever, the biggest fear is that they're going to gain an ounce of weight, you know, or whatever it happens to be, whether they overeat in the fear of that people won't accept them anyway, so why not just keep eating what it likes because it tastes good, you know? I know I have a problem with that. Either that or I just like the way things taste. It was funny because we had a birthday party yesterday, and this girl's husband made this wonderful Boston cream cake. Oh my gosh. And I was just like in heaven when I took a bite of it, and I'm like, wow, I forgot what this tasted like. You know, I never had a cake like that, but I thought it was good, so I indulged myself and had a piece, you know. And so, you know, it's a work in progress. It's not something that just goes away. You know, I can't sit here and say that I don't still like sweets or food or whatever, because obviously I do, and obviously I still eat it. But I'm accepting of it, you know. I'm accepting of, you know, and I'm also accepting that when I'm ready, I can change this, you know, when I'm ready. And that's what, you know, we should say to everybody, is that when you're ready, you know.
And it's being in the present moment, deep breathing, finding the first little step to move through the fear.
Yeah.
And again, from the reading I've done, I think particularly in Buddhism, it's struggle causes suffering.
Yeah.
So acknowledging it, but moving through it, so you're not fighting with it, you're finding what works for you.
So kind of like letting that anxiety, stopping that anxiety to breathe. Just long enough to take a breath and breathe, and I would think, giving your mind a rest so that you can function and think clearly.
Come back to the present moment.
Right, because, you know, obviously when you're panicking, it's not
Right.
there.
But again, as a life coach, I would say I'm not a therapist, and so if you're really struggling with fear and panic, I would say a therapist is who you need.
Right. And you know, therapists are great. They're great. I mean, I've had one the majority of my life, and it's really helped me, you know, so it depends on you. But yeah, they can be very, very helpful
But you have to be willing to participate in the therapy.
Right, exactly. You can't go in and think it's just going to be
Right.
easy.
Or do it because somebody's urged you to do it and you're really not wanting to do it.
Yeah,
It only really works, and life coaching only really works if you do the work.
right. Yeah, and I could kind of see where they would be kind of similar, but not similar.
Right.
You know, I can kind of see where therapy is very important for people that, need to process something and need to find ways to cope, And with life coaching, as you're saying, it's more about this is how you can do this part in your life, or this is what you need to do to change your life.
Right, and I had a client who, one of the pieces of homework I gave her, as I call it, you have things that you give clients to do to help them move forward, and it raised an issue for her. And I said, I can't help you with that. I'm not, you need a therapist for that.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's your role as a life coach or as a psychic to say, you need therapy.
Yeah. But that therapy is not a bad thing.
No.
A lot of people do think it is, but I'm a firm believer that it's a helpful tool.
I think, we still denigrate that some in
We
our
do.
society.
There's still a stigma around mental illness and therapists and psychiatrists and whatever. There's still that stigma. But, it's people that are open and honest and be able to say that those things have helped them.
I've seen therapists off and on.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't need to be schizophrenic, you
Right.
don't need to be paranoid. Sometimes you just need somebody to help you sort out issues.
Exactly. And that's what therapy's all about. And so I know we're going to be doing the show, and I know it's about time to wrap up, but maybe we could do like a thinking about what the next show might be about.
Well, you had a good idea about going through the book.
That's what I was thinking, like start with the first meditation, actually show what the process would be like. I think that would be a really good idea. And
Okay.
Yeah. So why don't we do that next time? So anyway, this is Linda Carbonell, and we are saying goodbye for Walking Through Life today. But myself and Catherine will be back next month.
Sure.
Yeah.
We'll work it out somehow.
Yeah, we will. So remember, next time we're going to be actually taking the steps, some of the steps in the books to actually help you understand how to meditate and do some of the exercises. So we'll see you next time on Walking Through Life. Bye-bye.
Walking through this life of mine, well, it's teaching me so many things, like how to love and how to lose and how to